Professor Turi King, welcome to the show. So lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Before we start, you're in to talk about The Secrets of Our DNA, your book, which is out on the 28th of May. Can you, not for the listeners, but for me, just pretend you're speaking to a 5-year-old child? And we'll get through the next half an hour really easily. Because I have done a deep dive and it's so fascinating.
Isn't it? I mean, I absolutely love the field, and it's changed so much from when I started. So I started off in archaeology and I moved into genetics in the 90s.
What was the move for?
Because
archaeology is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And you spend so long studying it, I imagine then to sort of pivot and gear shift.
So it's one of the stories that's in the book. I was from Canada and I came over here and I applied to Cambridge on a bit of a whim, and I was doing archaeology and anthropology. And I was sitting in this lecture theatre and my lecturer, Erica Hagelberg, was chatting about the Romanov case. So the Romanov case is amazing. It's the Russian royal family, so Tsar Nicholas and his wife and 5 of their kids and, you know, members of their household. They're murdered during the Bolshevik Revolution and their bodies are hidden. And they are eventually discovered and they find these bodies and they're like, is it actually the Romanov family? Mm-hmm. So they do the osteological analysis, they're looking at the bones. And then Erica was using this relatively new technique of DNA fingerprinting, and she was telling the story about how they had identified the remains. So they'd done DNA fingerprinting, but also they were using a piece of DNA known as mitochondrial DNA. So that comes down through the female line.
Right.
So they have the Tsarina. And Prince Philip was a female line relative. So they looked at his mitochondrial DNA, it matched the Tsarina, it matched the kids, and then they were able to identify the Tsar. And I was sitting there in this lecture there going, that's what I want to do.
Incredible detective work.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
So let's just take a step back. Explain the importance of DNA. This is the sort of the genetic instructions, right?
Yeah, it's like an instruction manual for us in terms of, you know, how to develop a human and have it grow and go on to make new little humans.
And we all have individual.
We all have our own individual DNA. Even identical twins have got differences in their DNA. And I suppose, you know, part of the reason for the book is that when I started out in the 1990s, it was just us geneticists were in the lab and we're working away and we write up our results. They go into the scientific journals and only geneticists read it. Now DNA touches on just so many parts of our life. And I get asked so many questions. So I started kind of writing answers to these questions, and that's kind of where the book came from.
And this all came about in the early 2000s, right? So this is the sequencing the human genome, is that?
Yeah.
So that sounds like a huge seismic kind of shift in your world and our world, really. So
it was.
What exactly is it and how did it change the world we live in now?
Well, okay, so this was being able to sequence the entire human genome. So I often liken our genome as basically like a book.
Yeah.
And it was trying to read, being able to sequence that entire book. And the idea is that can we then do things like determine what genes are involved in particular diseases?
How did they do that?
Oh, wow. Okay, so what happens is they actually took DNA from a few individuals and you start sequencing it. And it's basically just reading chunks of DNA to be able to understand what the DNA sequence was. And then they start to put those chunks together. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. And then we read the DNA sequence almost like you read a book. And then you're looking for genetic variants. So there's differences in all of our books between one another. And some of those might be genes associated with particular diseases, for example. That's basically what they were hoping, is they're going to use it for looking at genetic disease.
Was that brought about by technological advances and so forth? So,
absolutely. Some that you could do it to scale.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. So in the 1980s, when Alec comes up with DNA fingerprinting, it's a really, really long process in trying to understand the sequencing, and it took absolutely ages. And as technological advances come along, you can do that more easily. I mean, these days, you can sequence a human genome. I mean, it doesn't take very long to do. It's a matter of sort of hours to kind of do this
crazy,
kind of thing.
isn't it?
Amazing. And it's becoming ever cheaper. So the amount of information that's out there is hugely vast. In fact, that is the bottleneck these days. Doing the sequencing actually doesn't take that long. It's understanding the sequence and what we can learn from it, which is taking us ages, really. I know.
This is
it's
so fantastic.
And so I learned, as I was kind of talking to people, is that people learn the genetics through stories. So basically the book is a lot of stories.
Well, I was going to ask you then, because that book could be 4 times the size it is, right?
Yeah.
So how in the world do you, and you know, you've been involved in so many sort of interesting cases, how in the world do you begin to write that down and filter it? Because at the same time, like you said, you're used to writing papers for people who are experts already. Whereas this book is people who, like myself, who've got a keen interest but a glorious amateur, right?
Yeah,
So you need to write it in a digestible and easy to understand form. How did you find the process of it? Did you enjoy it?
I absolutely love it. I mean, so much it comes out of questions. Yeah. And having done this for a really long time, so I've been working in a field where the public have been interested. So it's like forensics and ancient DNA and genetic genealogy, so using DNA to sort of build family trees and understand ancestry. So I have lots of people who email me with questions, and I would be starting to kind of explain it. And I found stories is the easiest way to do it. And then the Richard III project, obviously I was involved in doing the identification of Richard III, and that kind of really put that storytelling process on steroids.
So, Turi, let's go back a little bit in terms of how in the world you're able to use DNA from how many years ago?
Are you talking Richard?
Well, I'm going to get to Richard, but I'm talking like how far back can we go with reliability?
Okay. So it depends on what the question is that you want to ask. Yeah. So, for example, if you're going, well, I think that my great-great-great-great-grandfather, whatever, was from this particular part of the world, you might not actually have traces of their DNA still in your DNA. So you get half of your DNA from your parents, 25% of your DNA from each of your grandparents, on average 12.5% from your great-grandparents, going back in time. And there's a process of DNA shuffling called recombination that goes on, where your chromosomes kind of line up next to each other and they shuffle bits of information, and then it gets passed down to you. So in that shuffling process, you can lose bits of DNA from any one particular ancestor. So in terms of asking questions about that, it's about 6 generations.
Okay. Is it completely arbitrary as to how that shuffles?
Yeah, there's a completely random shuffling process that happens. So it's the sort of thing that people go, well, I think that my grandparent on one side had this particular ancestry. Yeah, you will be able to look at that and go, yes, it does look like you've got about 25% of your DNA. It does look like it's coming from this particular part of the world. And that's amazing. So for people who are adoptees, so we had, lovely people on the television program I used to do with Stacey Dooley called DNA Family Secrets. Oh my goodness. So Matthew is one of my favorites from that program in that he was adopted. He was told his dad was Jamaican. Yeah. And you look at his DNA and it's like, okay, if he's Jamaican, I'm expecting it's going to come from West Africa, and he might have some DNA matches that are coming in the Caribbean. And that was not what I was getting at all. It was like Philippines, China, East Africa. And then when you look at where his DNA matches are coming from, it was the Seychelles. And he's recently been back to the Seychelles to kind of, understand his ancestry. So it's fantastic for if you want to do more recent, but not if you want to go too much further back than about 6 generations. But then that's giving you your kind of population that you're coming from.
Yeah.
Like that.
So how did you get to Richard III with reliability? Is 500 years quite a good ballpark then? Like, can you tell us the Richard III story?
Oh, okay, so Richard. So we knew quite a bit about where Richard III is supposed to be buried. So he is the last king of England to die in battle, and he dies in the last main battle of the Wars of Roses. And we know that after the battle, he is brought back and he's buried in the choir of the Church of the Grey Friars in Leicester. That's 1485. And where that friary is has never been lost, but his precise location of his grave was lost because you have the dissolution of the monasteries in 1538 and the friaries are all torn down. So way back in 2011, I get an email from Richard Buckley, who's the co-director of University of Leicester Archaeological Services, saying, I understand you have this unusual background in archaeology and genetics, and would you like to be involved in this project? We're looking for the remains of somebody who's quite famous, who's buried in downtown Leicester, and I can't tell you who it is. So I write back going...
So either the founder of Walkers or Richard III.
So I write back going, is this Richard III? And he's like, yes, it is, but don't worry, it's unlikely we'll ever find him. And then we start the excavation, and 6 hours, 34 minutes in, Matthew Morris, who is our site director, spots a little bit of what looks like leg bone.
That's all 6 hours?
6 hours, 34 minutes in, a bit of bone. So you can't just excavate skeletons willy-nilly. You have to get a license to do this. He also doesn't know if it's an articulated skeleton at this point, so he hops into the trench.
Meaning?
So that it's stuck together. So, I mean, it could just be a random bit of bone that's just kind of there. So he hops in, and he has a quick kind of check, and he goes, yeah, there's an articulated skeleton under there. Now, we've already got money in the pot that we've already budgeted to lift up to 6 sets of remains, but we have just started excavating. We're in a friary grounds. We could be inside the church. We could be outside the church. We know Richard's supposed to be in the choir a bit, but we could be in graveyard. There could be thousands of skeletons around us. And you have to make ethical decisions about which ones you're going to uncover and lift. And so we don't know where we are. We're only 6 hours, 34 minutes in. What we want to do is keep excavating and then see if we can kind of make a map and go, okay, so we think we found these bits of the friary. Does that skeleton that we found on the very first day, is it one that ethically and, sensibly we can actually lift this? And after 2 weeks, it does look like it is. So
because you've been able to age
so we've managed to kind of found bits of the friary. And we found bits of the choir, and it looks like where that skeleton is still covered is down at one end of the choir. Let's make that skeleton one. We'll uncover it. But we know that we're only going to do DNA testing on ones that look like they're about the right age. Richard was 32 when he dies, that look like they're in the right part of the church. And so Joe Appleby, our osteologist, uncovers this set of remains, and it's a youngish male with severe battle injuries. Richard's supposed to have died in battle. He's got severe scoliosis of the spine. Richard is famously described by Shakespeare as being a hunchback, not a term we use these days, obviously, but...
Also, Shakespeare kind of gave him quite a bad rap, right?
Oh, completely. I mean, he's writing in the Tudor period, so he gives him a withered arm and a limp and the full works. And that's at a time when it was thought that your outward appearance is a reflection of what you're like as a person. Yes. So he goes to town on him. I mean, the Tudors are never going to say he was a lovely man, he was great with kids, and we killed him. They're just never going to say that. So when we uncover the remains, everything is looking really good at this point. Youngish male, battle injuries, severe scoliosis of the spine. But we've got to do all the scientific analysis, and that takes absolutely ages. And we're doing radiocarbon dating and stabilized stuff. And then I do the genetic analysis. And because of the number of generations, so I've chatted to you about how, you can only kind of really go back 6 generations. That's for the majority of our DNA. So we've got 2 pieces of DNA that come down through the generations in a really, really simple way. So one of those is mitochondrial DNA. So it's in the egg. And so females will pass it down to their children, but only daughters can pass it down. So it's that female line relative thing that we did with the Romanovs. Same thing. So we can have female line relatives of Richard III. I take mitochondrial DNA from the skeleton, and then I match it against the living female line relatives of Richard, and there was a DNA match. And I can tell you it was one of those hair on the back of your neck moments when the results are coming back. You're like, oh my goodness. All of the evidence so far was pointing to these being the remains of Richard.
Professor, thank you so much, Turi. It's been lovely chatting to you. Just to finish up on, one thing you're very insistent on, I suppose, is our DNA doesn't have to define us. It's not our story.
Absolutely not. No, I think that's one of the things I hope people come away from with the book is the power of DNA. It's amazing what it can do, but also what it cannot tell you. Yeah. We are not just our DNA.
Professor Turi King, The Secrets of Our DNA, How Genetics Change the World, out on May the 28th. It's been lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much, Turi.